Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Burger. I'm Carol Ann Romo, the Executive Director for the New Mexico Beef Council. Joining me is Dr. AJ Tarpoff, and I didn't even ask you how to say your last name, so I might have totally butchered that. My apologies. But AJ, thank you so much for joining the podcast. Will you introduce yourself and talk about your background, and then I guess first tell me how to say your last name. Sorry.
So yes, AJ Tarpoff. I know it looks a little different, but it is easy to pronounce.
Perfect.
But I'm the beef extension veterinarian at Kansas State University, and a professor in the animal science department. I guess I recently got promoted, but I guess I can say that now.
Congrats.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I get to work within the beef industry in a lot of different ways. But my background, I guess, is I grew up in Southern Illinois, but not a location you would typically think about heavy beef cattle production, because it's not. I mean, it's corn and soybeans growing up off the Mississippi River bottom. But my family had a beef slaughter plant in Southern Illinois in Granite City. It's Tarpoff Packing Company. And so I grew up in the beef industry truly from producing beef. We had a slaughter plant. Then when I was a young child, we actually bought a high-end steakhouse. So
wow.
I grew up on the finished end of the beef industry, I remember bussing tables for folks that came to sit down on a white tablecloth meal. And I can say, like, it's really high end. That restaurant, believe it or not, we just sold it prior to COVID, but it was the first restaurant in the United States to serve CAB Prime.
So, how cool.
Going back a few years, because my dad was really integral with Certified Angus and Certified Angus Prime, and then CAB Natural, coming out years ago in the early 90s, and kind of started a lot of that. So that was my upbringing. Is I came up through the slaughter plant, the finished end at the steakhouse, driving around with my dad, purchasing cattle from farmer feeders all through Missouri and Southern Illinois and different areas like that. So that was kind of my exposure. But then it became time, what am I going to go do? And I really enjoyed the feedlot. I loved talking to those producers. I loved what they were doing. But I could see it translate on how they finished those animals to the steak that eventually made its way to somebody's plate. And that's where I was like, I want to be a part of that. I want to get into the feedlot industry. And I always had really good grades, and everybody always pushed me to go you should go be a doctor. And it's like, well, I don't want to work in a hospital. That doesn't fit me. But if I can mold some cattle production and a doctor together, I think that's what I want to do. So I came to Kansas, because if you're going to go be a feedlot veterinarian, you ought to go where the feedlots are and go. So I came to Kansas for my undergrad. Loved it. Absolutely loved the people. Really made a lot of good connections. Before veterinary school, I actually went and cut my teeth as a feedlot cowboy in South Texas on the King Ranch. So moved down there and worked at their feed yard, which was a lot of fun. However, I don't miss the 120-degree temperature with 100% humidity. That part wasn't always the best, but I did enjoy it. I got to learn more about feedlot production, got to learn about cattle health, and that really helped me moving into veterinary school. So went through vet school, had a wonderful mentor who was a feedlot veterinarian. Did some feedlot research at a 100,000 head feed yard in central Nebraska at Adams Landing Cattle. So I moved up there and did some research and was able to finish my grad degree and my DVM at the same time, and was very fortunate that I got a feedlot position, a feedlot consulting position right out of vet school. But that took me far and wide again. I went to Alberta, Canada.
Oh, wow.
So I went from South Texas, from Illinois to Kansas to South Texas to Nebraska, and then to Alberta. And I was in feedlot practice for about 4.5 years. Absolutely loved it. It was exactly what I set out to do. And then I got a phone call that says, "Hey, do you want to come back to your alma mater and be the beef extension veterinarian?" And I'm like, that's interesting. Why are you calling me? Well, no, I took a jump. It was an opportunity to come back and be closer to family and to be able to do some different things that I always had a lot of respect for this position for my predecessor. And I said, yeah, I would love to go have an opportunity to even try. And now I've been here for 10 years.
Wow. Wow. That is an incredible story and an incredible, trajectory that gives you so much experience and even in different climates, right? As a veterinarian now, right? To understand cattle behavior in 120 degrees and then cattle behavior in probably what, negative 50 or negative, how cold it gets in Alberta, right?
So I found out that negative 40 Celsius and negative 40 Fahrenheit are the same at negative 40. And
Oh,
that's
right.
about the time the hydraulic lines freeze in the hydraulic sheet.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Ouch. Ouch. Yeah, that's too cold. That is quite an experience. I'm grateful New Mexico is a very mild climate, right? We might get over 100 where I live, but we're definitely not getting to negative 40.
Right.
I'm a fair weather folks sometimes, but I know to be in the industry you don't get to be, right. You don't get to choose the weather. If cows need feeding, cows need doctoring, you don't get to choose the weather, right? That's actually a pretty special part of those that are caring for cattle.
Well, and we have different environments, we have different seasons, we have different challenges, no matter where we are within the U.S. or North America. I mean, we raise cattle in all 50 states, and every single location has unique and different challenges, and that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's neat to learn about all of them too. So tell me about your podcast as well. So you are also the host of a podcast.
So I am. About a year ago, I was approached and asked to begin hosting a podcast, which was interesting because I didn't even know what podcasts were and I didn't even listen to them. That has changed since then, I should say, and I have a lot more respect for them and I really enjoy them. But it's called the Beef Podcast Show. It's operated by kind of a bigger group, Wisenetics, that has some very industry engaged podcasts for all the different species. So for beef cattle production, for swine production, for dairy production, and the one that I'm associated with is really just beef cattle production, and it's very research centric. That we bring in experts within their own unique fields within cattle, and they get to share updated studies, updated information, kind of their area of expertise they get to talk about. So it's a really fun educational piece, and I never thought I'd enjoy being a host of something like that, but it helps me just connect with other experts within the United States and abroad. I mean, I've interviewed folks from Brazil and Argentina and different locations like that, and it's fun to just realize how small our industry is and how interconnected everybody really is, even if we don't maybe know each other's name, or maybe you heard of somebody's name but you've never talked to them. And I know a lot of what we do is virtual and it's not necessarily face to face, but it's still that connection piece that I really enjoy of doing podcasts, as I'm sure you're enjoying this as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I agree. When we started this podcast, I wasn't a podcast listener. I just knew so many people were, right. And that was where kind of the world was going and people are consuming this long form media. And so we started it. And then I realized, oh, this is kind of cool. And now I follow other podcasts, found your podcast. And there's a bunch of them now that I love. I even love the YouTube video version the best, right? I like to see it, but I'll pop on a podcast now and listen in the truck. And yeah, it's changed my opinion as well. I think we were hosting a podcast before I was listening to podcasts. But it's a neat form of media and an inexpensive form of media for us as a beef council. So that's kind of my favorite extra plug. So when you're working as an extension vet, how does that work connect back to ranchers and producers?
Absolutely. So extension really is that connection from the land grant mission of identifying and discovery with research at the university, but then ultimately getting that to a usable format and putting it into the hands of producers to improve their productivity. And in my case, it's cattle health and well-being and cattle productivity, which is perfect. So I'm able to be that direct kind of conduit of information to get it into the hands of people that are either wanting to make a change or having a problem, having a concern. But that's what I really enjoy. And I work with our beef council extensively. I'm the lead trainer for our beef quality assurance program here in the state of Kansas. Even have an opportunity to be a part of the advisory group for national NCBA. And so we're formulating all this information, we're developing all this information, but then it's kind of on my shoulders to some aspects through extension to be able to get that implemented and make sure that it reaches the intended audience, which is our cattle producers. And I I I, I think I do a decent job at that. I do a ton of in-person meetings. I know this is a virtual podcast, but any way that we can reach cattle producers, I am very engaged with. We do local producer meetings. We are, I do on ranch visits. That there may be bigger questions at hand where I'll go drive around with the producer in the side by side, go check cows with them and talk through some big business decisions. And, and that's a piece of it. Or I might be in an executive boardroom with a feedlot owner, operator, and manager with their consultants discussing some problems and things that need to get done. So any of those connections, whether it's media, whether it's radio, whether it's written, and you find it in popular press, it's a podcast, or it's that in-person connection, we kind of have to do it all.
Yeah, and I know in New Mexico we have our extension vet for NMSU is Dr. John Wenzel, and we appreciate him. He does the beef quality assurance training as well, and that access to information is so great. I know I sat through one of his talks, and he was explaining certain vaccines you got to swirl, not shake. If you shake them, you're killing the active virus, or you're ruining the vaccine, right? And just these little things that you get a vaccine from your vet, or you get this thing and you go home and you go to the ranch and you're just trying to do right, but you didn't know all the extra things. And so that extension veterinarian piece is huge. That information is invaluable.
Well, and we live in a time of limitless available information. I mean, we all have a smartphone and we can pick it up, and we have Dr. Google, of course. We can search anything online, but it's weeding through. Everybody they may not know what to ask or what to search for, or, we don't know what we don't know. And how are we supposed to learn about something if we don't know if it's a problem or if it's a need? And I think that's where the new age of extension is helping weed through the limitless amount of information and getting it down to something that everybody can grasp, that they can actually take a bite out of and then implement. So while extension has changed over the decades, as it should, to be able to reach a new audience, I think it's taken another step forward to understand that practical aspect that you can't find on a Google search, right? I
Absolutely.
mean, whether you shake or you swirl, how to properly mix vaccines. I mean, you could find a video, I'm sure, somewhere on there, but how would you know to search for that?
Right. Absolutely. And I think, even for us as beef councils and trying to work with consumers and inform consumers, there's a recent study we did. I think National Cattlemen's Beef Association did it. Is that who consumers trust with information, and the number one source is ranchers, and the number two source is veterinarians, right, and experts. And so the more we can get information out from an expert is so good. It's good for consumers, right? So that they can go to that fancy steakhouse and enjoy that delicious steak with confidence and with knowledge. So absolutely, I think experts like you and others that have that, the degree, the science, the research, all of that is important for our whole industry.
But we can't undersell the value of communication. You can have limitless knowledge and information, but if it can't get communicated in a meaningful way, it's really not useful. And I've had a lot of fun recently working with our beef council, targeting some of our consumer groups just to educate them on how we raise animals. And that has gone over really, really, really well. And I've always kind of had that niche because I came from that side of the industry of the finished end, all the way from, whether it's distributors, meat salesmen, folks with grocery chains, all the way to people making decisions for school lunch programs that are making purchasing decisions, that I can sit down and just have I can talk about the cattle industry and answer any and all of those questions. It's enlightening because I know every person I reach they don't, it doesn't stop with them. They're telling that story to their friends and their family, and it's all telling the story of beef. And we've got a great story to tell. And the more people that we can reach to understand that, I think we all win.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I have so much respect and admiration for the Kansas Beef Council and the work they do as well, and I think it's great. I even wrote that down. Absolutely, we should have our vets teaching consumers. I think that's and then like you said, communication is key. Finding the right way to do that, whether it's a positive experience with beef at a meal, whether it's a positive experience on a ranch or the podcasts or the social media videos, all those things, finding successful tools and trying kind of every form of communication and then seeing where it sticks is a challenge and a blessing that we have so many options.
We do have a lot of options today.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And even there's the Gary V guy on social media that's always inspiring people. He says stuff like the time we live in today where you can open your phone and tell people what you want them to know is unlike any other, right? It's an opportunity that should be seized, right? Because you have this and the TikTok and the short form, all of these things that you have it at your fingertips for free. And so if you want to market something, turn your camera on. And so that's what we try and do with the podcast, right? We turn the camera on and get a little comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, yeah. So, well, tell me about your cattle operations that you're involved with, right? You've got a couple.
Oh, right. I guess I should start that. My wife and I don't have any cattle at the house right now. Okay, but within our families, it's very integrated with a lot of different aspects of the beef business. My wife's family, they have a purebred operation that they raise purebred bulls of a couple different breeds, as well as a stocker backgrounder operation that operates year round in Southeast Kansas. And then the other side, my side of the family, actually operate a nationwide natural beef company. So it's Nyman Ranch, subsidiary of Purdue that my dad and my brothers are all work with, and I have an opportunity to consult with them, which they've taken some added steps, and they've actually purchased into quite a few animals that are scattered all over the U.S. with different producers from Montana to Iowa. It's a lot of fun, but kind of having some oversight and some availability of technical expertise that I get to work with them. Whether it's on the bull selection side, whether it's some of the animal health and management of some of those groups, it's a lot of fun to be able to do that. But it's get to implement some of the things that I preach from extension. We get to put into practice and go, oh yeah, hey, that worked great. I'm like, well, it should have.
Yeah. Oh, good. We were right. Oh, that's great. No, I think it's really cool to see the different aspects of the industry and how, you've got your day job, but you also have your hand in all of these things or these connections with family and all of that truly there's these family operations all across the country that seem, complicated and all of these things. Well, it's just families trying to do a good job, trying to raise quality beef, right? Put high quality beef on the table. So I think that's really interesting. So from your perspective, what's the most rewarding part of working in the beef industry?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This episode of Behind the Burger is brought to you by the New Mexico Beef Council. At NMBC, we're all about supporting New Mexico's ranchers and bringing the story of beef to life, from pasture to your plate. If you're enjoying these conversations, be sure to follow us on social media to keep the journey going. You'll find us on Instagram and TikTok at NMBeef and on Facebook at NM Beef Council. We're sharing ranch life, beef tips, recipes, and the people behind the plate. Come be part of the story.
Oh, most rewarding. I have to say the people. I mean, it's the people of the beef cattle industry are the salt of the earth, they're so proud of what they do, and they take so much pride in their work, their operations, their cattle, their families. All of that is intermixed. That I guess the most rewarding piece of being a part of the beef cattle industry having an opportunity to interact with those individuals. It is so rewarding for me to go travel around the state to be able to interact with folks. I may see them 2 or 3 times a year, but they're great friends that I met 10 years ago at an extension meeting. They call me on the phone all the time. But it's having those relationships with your friends, your neighbors, the people that you interact with. And over time, you realize that this is a tiny, very small industry. And I looked it up one time. And you could Google check me or Dr. Google check me on this.
Yeah.
But there are more people incarcerated in the United States than there are that work in the beef cattle industry.
What?
So more people
That's
incarcerated than raise
That's a
our
good stat.
So, I did look that up. So somebody can fact check me on that. But that was eye-opening. We are a very small percentage of our overall population within our state, our country, the world, but we produce a extremely, extremely valuable, high protein, high quality, high eating experience product. And we should be proud of that. And our producers, they are proud of that. And I'm proud to be associated with that, to be able to help provide for our consumer base.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I don't doubt that your stat is any exaggeration, because I know in New Mexico, I've got a little card right here that our New Mexico Cattle Growers group made, and it was showing how few it's, 1% of New Mexicans are farmers or ranchers. Well, then there's only 7,395 beef ranches in New Mexico, according to 2022 data. Unfortunately, that number probably hasn't gone up, and so if anything, it's probably gone down. And so, 7,000 people. We've got 2.1 million people in our state. That's crazy. That's how few of people are providing beef when we know consumer demand. Consumers are eating beef left and right. They're willing to pay extra. They want beef. They want the flavor. They want the experience, the value of a high quality protein, all the things. And there's only a few of us, a few people out there raising cattle and making the sacrifice, but absolutely they should be proud. And I'm grateful to represent them where they can't be, right? That's what we say about the Beef Council. We get to be in places that they can't be. They're feeding cattle, they're breaking ice, they might be sitting in a boardroom making decisions, and we're in schools and we're in consumer places in town trying to remind people that beef is a safe, healthy, wholesome option. So absolutely proud to represent and proud to be a small part of that industry. What do you think is one of the biggest challenges facing beef producers right now?
Oh, the big challenges. I mean, I guess let's start with the good. We have record prices. Okay. We have record calf prices, especially for our ranchers, right? We have record beef prices. That means we are producing the highest valued product that we ever have. But the unspoken piece that we can't forget about is demand. We are hitting demand on all aspects within our cattle industry. And that starts from the rancher, the feedlot, the operator, all the way through. We have the highest demand with the highest prices. That only happens when we are producing a superior product. And today we are producing a superior product, or else the markets would be upside down and everybody would be losing money. But that's a huge success story that we can't take for granted. So I guess the one challenge is maintaining that demand. If we don't maintain demand for our products, both domestically and overseas, because we do export portions of the product, the carcass in different areas, we need to maintain and grow and develop them, and making sure that we are answering the call of our consumer. I think that is number one. That is the ultimate challenge that all of us should be involved with, is making sure that we're answering that call and maintaining high demand. But more on the practical side for cattle operators, I say cost of production. We've got diesel fuel. I filled up the other day. I mean, it was over $5 for diesel. That even though we're getting more dollars per calf sold, every time that we drive out into our pasture is costing us more whenever we're going to put out mineral. It takes more to be able to produce that same animal than what it did. So cost of production is always a challenge that we have to be able to balance and manage, and we can throw in interest and all of the other stuff that we have to do. And you mentioned you guys are buying a ranch, full well what making the interest payment means. So, but we can't ignore that. And I know as cattle operators, we put our head down and we just get to work. But it is a good idea to make sure that we have that operation plan put together, that we understand what the costs are, understand what the expenses are, and then we can maximize our profits to the best of our ability. So cost and overall economics on the farm, I think, are always a challenge. But then just look at what's going on around the U.S. right now. We've got super El Nino starting in the Pacific Ocean. We've got weather variability out, you name it. We've got everything from we've got flooding in different areas of Kansas, and we have severe drought. So we have D4, drought in different areas of Kansas. And I saw the drought map the other day through Colorado and New Mexico. I mean, we're dry or we're swamped, and we have to manage cattle in both scenarios, and sometimes just a couple weeks apart. So I guess the weather variability and managing our animals and some of those stressors, I think, is always a continuous challenge. And I think it means more today than it has in the past, because each animal is such a much higher value, that every decision every day really matters to the overall profitability of our operations. And none of us are taking that for granted.
Yeah, I think those are great answers, because absolutely you've got thin margins as a rancher, and then you have out of your control factors, right? So you got to know your, I used to work for an ag bank, and the bankers would always talk about, you got to know your break even, so that when you sell them and you make these decisions based on the weather, that what's going to happen in the end. And for consumers listening, it's truly knowing how to break even on a ranch, right? It's knowing, how can I maybe make a little bit extra, but just as long as we can break even this year, right? And a lot of times that's a conversation. And then somebody might have a job in town because the margins are so thin. And a lot of times it is a labor of love, right? We talk about that with a lot of ranchers in New Mexico. It's often a labor of love. Do they want to be profitable? Absolutely. Do they try? Absolutely. But it's thin margins, because there's a lot of debt, there's a lot of high interest rates, there's a lot of diesel, all the things. So I think that was very well said. What's one thing you want beef consumers to know, especially, with giving your background, being around consumers in the restaurant and then now on the production side, what do you want consumers to know?
Well, I guess number one, I want consumers to understand it's a great time to be a beef consumer. So, I mean, we have record amounts of prime cattle hitting the market every time. And what that means for our entire industry is when our consumers go to a grocery store, they go to a restaurant, no matter where they're purchasing beef products, they're going to have a superior eating experience. That's what keeps them coming back. So the record amounts of high quality beef entering and high choice and prime, that is doing nothing but helping us from the consumer facing scenario, because they're going to come back. They're like, wow, that was a great steak. That was a great burger. That was a great, whatever they're purchasing. They had a great eating experience. They can cook it at home. It's more forgiving. So when we have a prime steak compared to maybe a select steak, the prime one is much more, forgiving if they don't cook it quite right. So that's okay. That all helps us as a cattle industry, and it maintains demand. I think number one is that's really the one key piece is you're in an awesome time to eat beef, because you're going to have a good eating experience every time you make that purchase.
Yeah, again, great answer. And I know we even buy high choice steaks. If we buy steaks, we love to buy them from the grocery store, and we just find a choice option that looks highly marbled. You see a lot of the fat in there, and we get a great eating experience for a little less price, right? Because, no matter how much we love beef, we still try and shop around, right? And we love a high choice in our house. If we're going to buy prime, it's got to be a special occasion, right? But again, like you said, it is more forgiving. So that is a great reminder. If you're not confident in cooking, you buy a nicer steak. It's going to taste good no matter what you do.
Well, here's a tip for anybody listening in. If you go to maybe a big box store, if you go to a Sam's Club, a Costco, something along those lines, where you can buy a whole, maybe a ribeye or a strip or a tenderloin, uh, and obviously they're discounted prices because they're selling in bulk. Now, the other way that they get those prices so low is they haven't been aged yet. And what I mean by that is those vac sealed bags, we call it wet aging. And many times that when you buy it at a Costco or a Sam's or someplace like that, that piece of meat is probably only 5 to 7 days out of the packing house. Well, whenever you go to a restaurant and order a steak, that steak has been minimal, at least 21 days aged before it was cut and cooked. So one trick that everybody can do at home, if you do purchase steaks and or purchase a bigger wholesale cut like a ribeye or a strip, buy it, don't cut it right away, put it in the bottom of your fridge and let it sit for 2 weeks. It will be much more tender and a better eating experience than if you would have cut it and cooked it right away. And that's just a part of meat science and the wet aging and making sure that it was that true vac seal package. It can help with eating all the way through.
So, and you just have to make sure it's vacuum sealed, right? And then you shove it to the back of your fridge. So I'm always scared to do that, but I've been given that advice quite a few times. But we're always scared to do it. But one day it'll happen in our house, I'm positive. But that's great advice and really fun. Yeah, as long as it's vacuum sealed, right?
Correct.
That's the trick.
If it's just the plastic wrap on the outside, that doesn't work.
No.
It's got to be the true vac sealed to be able to allow the natural enzymes, break down some of the protein structure, and that's what gives a more tender product whenever you go to cook it.
Oh, that's perfect. I need to try that. It is a great time to be eating beef. I agree. There are there's good information out there too. What's something you're paying close attention to right now in the beef industry, in your role?
Yeah, so I guess right now I'm always keeping an eye on heifer retention. We're at a very low in our cattle cycle of overall cow numbers to be able to produce some of those calves. And I know regionally there is some heifer retention and some herd growth, and it's very weather dependent. We have climate variability around the U.S. and even around Kansas, but we're seeing that uptick, and hopefully if we start retaining some of those heifers to become cows, fewer of those heifers enter the feed yards. And that's a good thing for our cattle industry as we start growing some of those numbers so we get more pounds of beef. So that's one thing that I'm keeping a close eye on. I think we're right at that intersection, right at that verge that it's probably happening more than what we see in some of the USDA numbers, but I'm speculating at this point. But that it's exciting to start seeing that because this has been a longer cattle cycle than what we initially thought a couple of years ago.
Absolutely. I've heard that a lot. And I think I was asking somebody much smarter than me recently about, we talk about low cattle herd numbers. And I'm like, yeah, but that's on the USDA census, right? And is everybody filling that out? Honestly, do we really know that this is true? And that was in 2022. How do you know? But then they did explain to me that it also has to do with how many animals they're processing and feedlot numbers, and there's other ways to also tell. But yeah, I was having trouble wrapping my mind around it. I was speculating because I thought, come on, not everybody's filling out that form, right? Or maybe they, how do you know how many cattle we have? So anyways, but they did explain that there are other ways to know that for sure the cattle herd is low and heifer retention is needed, right? And so I think if a consumer's listening, and if that's maybe a confusing concept, which I don't know that it is, but heifers are the younger moms, right? Younger cows. And if you can keep them in your herd so that your herd grows and you start, instead of sending them off to, harvest and going on to be a beef product right away, keep them in your herd so that you've got more calves, more babies, and then eventually more animals to feed out. Would that be a layman's way of explaining heifer retention?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So it all goes back to supply and demand. So our supply of cattle numbers is low. The only way we grow that is we produce more mama cows. But if we produce more mama cows, that means there's less beef entering into the supply chain. And that's difficult to do when it's very valuable and where you have record prices for that calf to go that route. So it takes a big investment for for ranchers to not sell an animal and maintain that animal for 2 more years before it has its first calf and it can get a paycheck for itself. So it's not just as easy as, oh, snap our fingers and there's more cows. We have to grow and develop those cows, and it's going to be 2 years before she even has a baby calf to sell. So,
right.
It's a big investment for our ranchers to be able to make that. And that's why that tells us where we are as an industry on how many are they really maintaining that? And if they're maintaining those heifers, that also tells us something about their profitability, that they've been able to maintain profitability, that they're okay sacrificing that individual paycheck to make sure that they grow their herd for the next year.
Yeah, because a young heifer is worth a lot of money, right? So you could
yeah.
cash her out now or save her for 2 years and then cash out her babies, right? So it makes sense economically, but sometimes you need the check right away, right? Sometimes it's, like you said, diesel is expensive, all the things. It's a hard decision. So very, very interesting topic, and I think a great thing to keep an eye on. Can you tell me about a time the industry surprised you or maybe challenged you?
The industry surprised. So here's one. And I think most people, at least the cattle producers were listening, know very well what this means, is the veterinary feed directive. So back in 2016, 2017, there was some, the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, put some regulation on how we use products that go through the feed. And that was a challenging time for the industry. But I guess what surprised me is, even though just like any government regulation, it's vague and nobody understands what it means. That happened with the VFD. I mean, there was a lot of communication going up through government and everything else. But one thing I'll say is that the beef cattle industry as a whole accepted that challenge, made good decisions, and made it their own. The FDA didn't. I mean, honestly, they probably did not know exactly how this was going to play out. But it's very rare that you hear anybody talking about it, even after just a couple of years. It's just back to its regular operations, regular, your day to day, and it's just a part of the daily structure now. So to me, that was surprising, and it was also a challenge. But I was also very proud of how our industry stepped up to the plate to, one, reduce the regulatory burden in the future. Two, we answered the call and are carrying out that with the intent that was desired. So that doesn't happen by one individual or one operation. That took a feed industry, the veterinary community, and cattle producers all working together to be able to make sure that happens. Oh, and guess what? We have veterinarians and nutritionists talking about some of these things to make sure everything is matching for those producers to hand. So it was a great learning opportunity, but it was a growth phase. And ultimately for our consumers, it just means more veterinary oversight and more prudent use of any type of medication going through the feed. So if we have to use a feed grade antibiotic, for an example, guess what? There's a veterinarian that makes that decision, and there's a paper trail that there's an approval, and there's a paper trail that we both use that product appropriately for the right amount of animals for the right duration. So it's all about judicious use of antibiotics. And I am proud of our industry on how they handled that. Oh, it was a stressful few years, but we got over that hump, and I am proud of the industry.
Oh, and it's more proof too of the amount of care and detail that goes into raising beef, right? All of the things you have to think of, the withdrawal period, right? And animals, if they're on a medication, can't go to harvest until that medication is out of their system to keep the food system safe. And then at the packing plant, it's tested and made sure that there's no medicine in the system, right? So people eating beef can have confidence knowing the attention to detail that happens in the process.
Safe and wholesomeness.
Absolutely.
Every bite is safe and wholesome for all of our consumers. That is paramount. That is step one. There is no wiggle room in that. Safe and wholesome is what our beef industry produces.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received in your career?
Best piece of advice. So here's one. Nobody cares how much you know until they find out how much you care. So what my mentor always used to, Dr. Dan Thompson was my grad, senior professor, and he always told us that is nobody cares how you could know everything in the world. Nobody cares until they find out that you actually care about them. And I think that's always an important piece of understanding and working relationships, whether it was a client when I was in practice, whether it's a producer I'm on the phone with and helping, with an extension concern. It's a student. It doesn't matter who I'm interacting with. They don't care anything about me until they find out I care about them. I truly care about their well-being, their animals' well-being, their operations well-being, their productivity. Once they figure that out, then they'll open their ears and listen. So I truly believe that's one of the best pieces of advice, that if I'm not getting through to somebody, I always think back, okay, well, maybe they don't know I'm trying to help them. Maybe I need to reestablish myself and say, that's why I'm here. That's what I'm trying to do, is to help. And then we can make some steps.
I think that's a good reminder of how we should be as humans, right? It's the human connection first, and then it's the, educating or the informing or whatever. But first, if we can make those positive connections with people and know that we probably have more in common with each other than we think, then so much more can happen, right? We can even agree to disagree, right? But if we know that we both care, that's excellent advice. So why do you do what you do? What motivates you to keep, studying the industry, to keep representing the industry, and keep caring for cattle in your free time?
Yeah. Well, I guess when it's a passion, the beef cattle industry is my passion. And when you're working and you wake up in the morning and the goal is to help and promote the beef cattle industry to the best of your ability, that's pretty open-ended. So, and it also is everything that, my family is very integral with the beef cattle industry. So I guess it's a little bit self-serving, helping the industry because you work within the industry. But that's what keeps me going is helping those people produce that high quality beef and being a part of the beef cattle industry from conception all the way to plate. I think it's an open-ended piece that the job has never done. And I can do a lot of different things throughout that entire span, but that's what keeps me going is I love the industry. It's ingrained in my DNA. As long as my family has been in the United States, we've been in the beef business. So it's hard. I can't think of doing anything else. And it's exciting to be able to have that opportunity to represent the industry, but also help the industry in a lot of different ways to be better. It's a path of continuous improvement. And I think that's what we're all after.
Yeah, that passion is something that drives a lot of folks, right? And is really important. So we're grateful. I'm always grateful as a beef consumer that folks have the passion to keep doing it, right? Because it takes everyone. And thank goodness people like you and your family are willing to continue and learn and improve their operations and improve their, everything they're doing. It's absolutely important. Is there anything else that you wish consumers better understood about animal health care specifically?
I guess one piece you alluded to this a minute ago, but the regulations that surround that we have to work with. So all animal health products, whether it's a vaccine, whether it's an antibiotic, whether it's something that we use for fly control or internal parasites, all of those animal health products go through stringent testing for safety. Everything that we use in food producing animals has to go through that safety verification. And that's what sets up what we call, meat and milk withdrawal periods. That if we utilize a vaccine, we have to wait a certain amount of days before that animal can enter the human food chain. Whether it's an antibiotic, it gets broken down and excreted out of the body. That takes a certain amount of time. All of that work has gone into those products. Then because a lot of times I hear, antibiotics or feed this or this or this. And once I go into kind of the regulations that as cattle operators and veterinarians we work within, that there are some products that are excluded that we just can't use. We don't have access to because it hasn't been proven safe. That we are, I don't want to say we're restricted, but we are restricted. That we have very specified products that we can use for specific purposes, and it's all meant to, one, help the health and well-being of those animals, but two, ensure the safety and wholesomeness of the beef and the products that are coming out of that animal. And I talk with a lot of consumer groups about that, and just understanding, an antibiotic or a growth promoting implant, or what those things are and how they work within the body, what their approval looks like, and really just basic use. That's a disconnect that we have with our consumer, and that's okay. But they need to understand that, we have protocols in place. We have things like the Beef Quality Assurance Program that ensures pre-harvest food safety and proper care of those animals throughout its entire life. That producers take time out of their daily lives and get a continuing education every 3 years just to be able to raise food for them. Like, that speaks volumes to our consumers. And I just, for any and all consumer, I think it helps them understanding more of that picture, that a producer isn't just a producer. They go out of their way to continually get better. There are rules and regulations in place that we follow for pre-harvest food safety and how we use any animal health product. And then there's testing and safety that happens throughout the entire chain before it gets to them. That safety and wholesomeness is not something that we just talk about. It's fact. And I think all consumers should understand that to a deeper level. And I think it would help them feel better about every time they purchase beef.
I hope so. Absolutely. We talk about it a lot. And sometimes regulations, everyone knows the word regulation sounds kind of like a burden. It sounds kind of, ugh. But if it can give a consumer confidence, that's exactly what it should do, right? Because there's all of these regulations, all these things. We want consumers to be confident in the safety and wholesomeness of the product. So great information, and really, really appreciate that. What advice would you give someone interested in pursuing a career in the beef industry?
For a career in the beef industry, the sky is the limit. My goodness, we already mentioned about how small our industry is, but there are so many job opportunities in areas that are growing in our industry that it may not be. We still need a feedlot cowboy, but now we have technology companies that are helping that feedlot cowboy be more productive. We have feed ingredient companies that are monitoring, different things at the feed yard. We have, there's so many ancillary businesses that all support the beef cattle industry from top to bottom that are all necessary, and they're all hiring. So, and what's cool about the cattle industry is you don't have to come from a specific background to be really successful. There's some baseline information that's helpful to get started, but then you learn a lot in the business. And as long as you can work with people, you have a positive demeanor, there is no limit. You can become the CEO of a company. You can work with people. You have a good, strong work ethic. You show up every day. That if somebody wants to go work in the cattle industry, it's not just breaking a square bale and putting it out for 4 cows. It could be, or you could be working for a technology company that is directly impacting the cattle industry, or it could be a piece of technology that's on a feed truck that makes the feed truck more efficient and it saves burning diesel fuel. So there's so many growth areas within the cattle industry that I would recommend anybody and everybody, if you have an interest in the care and well-being of animals and want to support the beef cattle industry, there's a place for you. So I guess we should never undersell that I understand that breaking water tanks and -40 isn't for everybody. But there are other things within the cattle industry that I think there is a place for a lot of different folks. And that's where, within K-State, we have a lot of undergraduate students that may or may not have strong livestock experience coming into to get their bachelor degree. but we exposed them to a lot of different people within the beef cattle and the dairy industries to make sure they understand the opportunities, whether it's banking and loaning, right? How many bankers out there have a direct line to agriculture and understand a cattle operation? That can be a huge benefit to help both ways, help the bank and help the cattle operations, having somebody have that knowledge. So everything from lending to insurance to actual operations, there's opportunity, and don't downsell it because it's a part of ag. Ag is a huge and growing operation nationwide that it's something people should look into.
I would absolutely echo that, that there's opportunities for everyone. And yeah, if you have interest and you have that passion or even just a curiosity about where your food comes from, there's a place for you, and the career opportunities are endless. And don't be afraid to try something that maybe you had no idea you'd be interested in. Your career path doesn't have to be straight lines, right? It can zigzag around. I took a detour at a restaurant. I took a, detour over here, over there. And it's a great industry. And like you said in the beginning too, the people are very rewarding and welcoming it for the most part. Right. So we hope more people join, because we need more people to join.
And it takes all kinds. And the more you get into the cattle industry, you realize there's all types of backgrounds. I mean, nobody looks the same. Nobody even speaks the same language. But as long as everybody speaks cow, it works pretty well. And it's that's what's fun working in the cattle industries. You never know who you're going to interact with, but everybody has the same goal. And it's to take care of the animal, produce a high quality product. And that crosses language barriers. It crosses cultural backgrounds when everybody has that unique goal.
Absolutely. Okay, so my last question, sometimes my favorite question to close. What's your favorite way to eat beef? And it can be, your current favorite. It could be often. The forever favorite. But so what's that? Often. That's my favorite answer.
No, to be honest, if I had to pick one single cut, or I guess one single piece of meat, I could eat a ribeye every day. I truly, the spinalis, the cap muscle off of the ribeye, is, my opinion, the best tasting cut on the entire beef animal. But I know I probably can't eat a ribeye every single day. And right now my freezer is out of ribeyes. But one thing I do have that I've really been enjoying is some short ribs. So I've kind of perfected a way to be able to smoke and cook some short ribs. I cook them very similar to a brisket, and they are fantastic. So I'm a big fan of the chuck short ribs right now. But I can never overlook the value of a ribeye.
Absolutely. Yep. Great answers. Often ribeye, short ribs. Love it. All of them. Well, very cool. Well, I so appreciate your time, your knowledge, and your willingness to be on our podcast. And thank you for what you do for the beef industry in so many ways, whether it's, advocacy with your podcast and your outreach, what you do with the Kansas Beef Council, and as a veterinarian and a cattle operator. So thank you again, and I really appreciate you being on the podcast.
Well, thank you, and my hat's off to you and the New Mexico Beef Council. The Beef Council, it's a checkoff, funds a lot of different things, and a lot of it happens behind the scene of what cattle producers may or may not see. But this is something that crosses that boundary. I think whether a producer is listening in, they know what's happening with the checkoff. They're able to put a face to the checkoff with you, but also to our consumer. Our checkoff is meant to maintain beef demand. And I really do what you guys are doing with the podcast and the outreach that you're doing in New Mexico. And I know we do a lot of it in Kansas, but every state's in it together, all making sure that those dollars get the maximum amount of exposure and marketing to the beef cattle industry to make sure we're keeping up on demand. So thank you as well. And I appreciate the opportunity of being on. And now I know another podcast I need to keep an eye on.
Well, there you go. Well, thanks. Yeah, we hope you add us to your queue. And yeah, thank you again. And absolutely shout out to the Kansas Beef Council. They're a great partner and a great collaborator with us as well in all the other states. So, well, thank you again. And that's it for another episode of Behind the Burger. Behind the Burger is produced by the New Mexico Beef Council to celebrate the people and stories behind New Mexico beef. Thanks for listening. Follow the show so you never miss an episode, and connect with us on social media for more behind-the-scenes stories and updates. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at NM Beef, and on Facebook at NM Beef Council. We'll see you next time, and until then, beef, it's what's for dinner.